A very warm welcome to the e-com marketplace Confluence 2015, organized by Legal League Consulting as a part of the Think, Manage and Lead series. My name is Shikha Singh and I shall be your host for the day. Knowledge, as we all know, is vital for the transformation and transition of life. With your keen participation, today's day shall be an ideal forum for enhancing our knowledge and manifesting the prospective opportunities available in the e-commerce sector, a sector that has seen unprecedented growth in the recent times. Just to give you a short synopsis of our plan for the day, we have planned to have 4 sessions in the first half of the day and 3 sessions in the second half of the day. The evening will be concluded by an awards ceremony where we shall be felicitating the achievers of the e-commerce sector. So I'm sure this deserves a round of applause. Thank you. Before we start the conference, may I take a moment to thank all our partners for extending their support to this conference. We are really grateful for your association with us. Without any further delay, let me request, first of all, Ms. Bithika Anand, founder and CEO, Legal League Consulting, to address our distinguished guest and extend the welcome address. Ladies and gentlemen, a few words about her. Legal League Consulting is a pioneering initiative and India's first management consulting company for the global legal industry. A chartered accountant and law practice management expert from Nottingham Trent University, Ms. Anand has close to 3 decades of experience in the business and professional consulting domain. Her never-ending pursuit to inspire excellence and encourage professionalization has earned her the uncompromising trust of the leaders in the industry. Recently, she has been honored as the leading woman consultant of the year at the annual Leaders India Summit. As part of the core team, she works with many leading Indian and international firms, advising them on various strategic and financial initiatives. Ms. Anand, may I please request you to come forward?
Good morning, everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you, to those who have already here and many more who would be joining us during the course of the day. I thank all of you for taking time out from your hectic schedule to be with us today, especially those who have traveled all the way to be part of this gathering. Legal League Consulting has conducted several conferences in the past on various areas such as management for law firms, convergence of business and law, UK-India Legal Practice Conference in partnership with the Law Society of England and Wales in London, and industry-specific confluences. We intend to bring business and legal fraternity on a common platform for spreading awareness that business and law are like hand in glove. And no law can be practiced in isolation from business. And if there is any gap between the two, our endeavor is to bridge the gap. These deliberations today will lead to business-oriented solutions by lawyers, which will augment the true progress of commerce in our economy while ensuring the required checks and balances. Confluences such as these provide a medium to meet so many brilliant minds like all of you under one roof and learn from your enriching experiences. However, what I find today is conferences are becoming more of a place to network. But what I think is what is most important is the relationships that we build in such gatherings, because once the relationships are established, everything else follows. We got a very good response from the first sector-specific conference held earlier this year that focused on extensive discussions about the non-renewable energy sector. The response has encouraged us to keep on with our efforts, and we plan to continue holding sector-specific events on industries like FMCG, startups, pharma, healthcare, etc. The question being next is, what do we intend to achieve by doing these industry-specific conferences, other than, of course, sharing knowledge, discussing business issues, challenges facing the industry, and its probable solutions? Then what next? According to me, next is we plan to create an industry-specific think tank with the support of legal stalwarts and business stakeholders. The think tank can take the issues to the relevant and the right forums to get them resolved, rather than just being no further action being taken after being discussed in these conferences like these. Though this is, I know, is very extremely challenging, but I'm sure with the support of all of you here, we can make it happen. The e-commerce sector has seen exponential growth despite the operational and regulatory challenges coming its way. According to recent reports, the sector has compounded annual growth rate of 34% since 2009 and is expected to cross the $22 billion mark this year. It is further expected to grow and touch $50 to $70 billion by 2020. The booming e-commerce sector has helped India record more than $9.5 million in private equity investment deals in the first 6 months of 2015. At this pace, the total PE deals may surpass a record of $17.1 billion by end of this year. With so much of traction in the sector and the buzz surrounding it, we found it to be the most appropriate theme for today. However, this sector is not free from challenges. While some experts say that there is a bubble surrounding e-commerce activities which will burst with time, others say that not all the players will be able to survive due to long gestation periods. Today, the e-com marketplace Confluence will offer an ideal forum for enhancing our knowledge on e-commerce and allied aspects like compliance frameworks, tax and regulatory, structuring, payments, transactions, organization scaling, risk and fraud, etc. LegalLeak's Consulting's journey for last 5 years has been full of excitement, challenges, passion, innovation, and commitment. With the support from all our patrons and well-wishers, we are moving towards the path of fulfillment of our vision. So today, LLC is not only working with Indian law firms on management solutions, we are also working with foreign law firms for their India-related strategy and legal departments in India to bring operational efficiencies and implement best practices. I'm also very excited to share that we have informed a dedicated innovation team in LegalLeak Consulting that will focus a lot of upcoming unique and interesting initiatives which the legal profession has never witnessed before. We see ourselves as an integral part of the evolution of the legal profession. I'm hopeful that this move, today's move, will also be another milestone achieved in LegalLeak Consulting's overall vision to partner with the legal profession and create a unique position for them in the overall economy. Our mission is to deliver vital insight, strategic advice, and execution-level support to the legal profession and to ensure competitive advantage and success. We aim to collaborate with all of you to make it happen. While a lot has been achieved by us, I really believe that this is just the beginning and sky is the limit. With these lines, I thank all of you, as this conference would not have been possible without you agreeing to be part of it. Let us look forward to an enriching and an interesting day ahead. Isn't it exceptional to have the most happening e-com companies like Flipkart, Snapdeal, and Amazon on the same panel, and especially during the Diwali time? Thank you.
Let us now begin the conference with the inaugural session, a session that will enable us to understand views from seasoned managing partners and legal stalwarts. May I please have the pleasure of requesting our honorable chief guest of the day, Mr. Cyril Shroff, who is one of the most leading luminaries in the global legal profession, to please come forward on the stage. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, it's very kind of Mr. Shroff to have made it to this Confluence, considering the fact that he has a ET jury meeting to attend in this afternoon, and he needs to catch a flight back to be on time. We are grateful to you, sir, for coming all the way to be a part of this conference. Welcome, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Shroff is the managing partner of Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas, with over 33 years of experience in the range of areas, including corporate laws, securities market, banking, infrastructure, and others. Mr. Shroff is regarded and has been consistently rated as India's top corporate, banking, and project finance lawyer by several international directories and publications, including the International Financial Law Review, Euromoney, Chambers and Partners, Asia Pacific Legal 500, and Asia Law. More recently, he was awarded India Managing Partner of the Year 2015 by Asian Legal Business. Please put your hands together for him. Next, may I please request our guest of honor, Mr. Ajay Bell, a renowned legal expert, to please come on the stage. He is the managing partner of AZB and Partners. Apart from being associated with significant transactions and advising leading Indian business houses and multinational corporations, Mr. Bell has also served as an independent expert on behalf of Government of India on matters of accounting and tax issues before the International Court of Justice at The Hague. Having been nominated by the Government of India, he serves as a member of Board of Discipline of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, which decides on allegations against CAs in practice. Welcome, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, just to inform you, yes, definitely a loud round of applause for all our dignitaries sitting on board. Ladies and gentlemen, just to inform you, our distinctive guest for the evening, Dr. Lalit Bhasin, President, Society of Indian Law Firms, SILF, would not be able to join us for this conference because he's having high fever and is unwell. Well, moving on, the next dignitary to join us here would be Mr. Gaurav Dani, partner in this law. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. He is one of the young names to reckon with in the legal profession. Mr. Dani specializes in private equity transactions, restructuring of investments in the real estate sector, structuring of offshore funds and investments, structured finance transactions, commercial lending transactions, capital markets across all sectors, including e-commerce, retail, food and hospitality, infrastructure, telecom, to just name a few. Mr. Dani is a recommended lawyer for banking and finance and capital markets in New Delhi in the Asia Pacific Legal 500 and is a regular speaker at seminars in India and overseas. Please put your hands together once again for all our dignitaries. With that, may I please request Mr. Cyril Shroff, our honorable chief guest for the day, to please commence the inaugural session. Over to you.
Thank you, Legal League, for having me here today. It's a great honor, and thank you for those generous words of introduction. I think the good thing is I don't take all of that very seriously. Happy to be here on the panel with Ajay and Gaurav as well. And as I accepted the invitation and was thinking about what to say today, I figured that in the course of the day, you're going to get an overdose of e-commerce, facts, data, how many $1 billion worth of goods change hands every second, what's happening with technology, what's happening to the funding space, and how the world is going to change. And I think all of that is true. So I decided to step back a little bit and, considering this was the inaugural session, to really look at what's happening in the world and why is this phenomenon, what underlies the e-commerce frenzy, call it the e-commerce frenzy, revolution, phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. and why is it happening at this point of time? It could be happening and be successful, I believe, only if there's something fundamentally changing in the world. And that is exactly what I'm going to talk about. I think the world in general, and emerging markets and development, all of the entire planet is undergoing major disruption. And it is a disruption that surpasses what happened in the first industrial revolution, because it's happening much faster and on a much bigger scale. So there's disruption taking place in virtually everything that affects our life, and there is almost constant discontinuity of everything. We just look at how our country has evolved since the early 90s, when the sort of first economic liberalization and revolution happened, and where we are today. It's so fundamentally different, and the speed at which it has happened is incredible. I think the rise of e-commerce is really a symptom of this larger disruption and change that is taking place in the world because of so many factors. And I was reading an interesting book, and several sort of try to keep up to date of what's really driving change and what's happening to all of us. And there are really 4 factors that are making this happen. What is this disruption caused by? So the first of the 4 causes is the fact that the entire focus of economic activity is shifting from the traditional developed markets to the east and to the emerging markets. And within these markets also it is actually shifting to new cities, the counterintuitive cities. Take China for example. Some of the largest cities are cities which you probably never heard of in terms of the demand, the population, and the amount of development that has taken place. Some of the GDP of some of these cities is more than some of the European countries, and you haven't probably even heard of these cities. And this has all happened in the last 5 to 10 years. So there is a move from the west to the east, from the traditionally orthodox industrialized economies to the emerging markets, and that is happening very fast. Another statistic, in 2005, 95% of the Fortune 500 companies were based in the West, or the traditional developed economies. The prognosis is that by 2025, 50% of the global's big companies, those with $1 billion plus capital, will be based in the emerging markets. And we are in the midpoint of that change. So this is the first point, the move from the orthodox, traditional, sort of developed markets to the emerging markets, and west to east. And there's a lot more nuance around that as well. The second is technology, and which also directly connects with the primary theme of today. So the scope, the scale, and the impact of technology has been a tremendous enabling force. The e-commerce revolution could not have happened, say, 10 years ago, when the technology was still, the technology platforms were still evolving. It's the rise of technology, rise of the internet, and rise of the mobile revolution that has made it possible. It's been called the phenomenon of the second half of the chessboard. I don't know how many of you know this story of the second half of the chessboard. Anyone? Okay. The story goes like this. There was a Chinese emperor who, his inventor, the innovator in Darbar, invented chess. And the emperor said, I want to reward you. Name whatever you want. So he said, on a chessboard, on the first box, give me 1 grain of rice. On the second box, give me 2 grains of rice. On the third box, give me 4 grains of rice. And on the fourth box, 8 grains of rice. And there's a doubling that has to be done. Till the first half of the board was over, it was relatively uneventful. But on the second half of the board, by the time the game was completed, and the emperor was honoring his obligation, on the last box, it was 1,000,000 trillion grains of rice, which was enough to cover the planet twice. So the emperor went bankrupt, and the innovator became king. What is happening today in technology is exactly that. We are in the second half of the chessboard. You must have heard of, all techies would have heard of Moore's law. which is basically that the computing power doubles every 18 months. So 32 doubles have happened. We have finished the first half of the chessboard. We're now on the second half of the chessboard. And when that happens, I think that is exactly where technology, mobile, and the e-commerce. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the Economic Times today on Amazon's fastest growth outside the US has been in India. In 2 years, they've crossed 12 million and I know folks from Amazon are here, so I don't want to steal a line from them, but this is the second half of the chessboard. And I was just completely connected the two stories. So computing power, data revolution and the empowerment that it brings, and the mutually amplifying forces. 20 years ago, only 3% of the world had mobile. Today, 2/3 of the planet has a mobile. 20 years ago, 1% access to the net. Now 1/3 of humanity has access to the net. And adoption is much faster. Look at the speed at which adoption is taking place. By the time the first 50 million users of radio you reached the 50 million user mark. For radio, it took 38 years. For Twitter, it took 9 months. At the speed at which adoption of technology is happening is again driving the change. So, and the fear of sort of entering too late into a technology is gone. I think that the fact that new technologies can be brought in and the risk appetite of adopting a new technology is significantly low. Look at the Uber phenomenon. In terms of the sheer space, and it's happened in a blink of an eye before we knew it, and taxi drivers and taxi operators all over the world are just wondering what happened. And look at the fundamental nature of the organization. The world's biggest taxi hire company, Uber, has no taxis. Facebook, which is the world's largest media services company, does not produce any content. Alibaba, the world's biggest retailer, has no inventory. And Airbnb has no real estate. So what's happening over here is, I think, that the delayering of the entire chain from R&D, production, distribution, sales and marketing, that has got deconstructed. And the thin layering of the market space and the delivery chain, so to speak, is where the e-commerce revolution has come in. Because that's where the value is seen, that's where the profits are seen. And it's not about owning the whole chain, but it is owning about the important pieces where the customer experience is the maximum. The phenomenon of e-commerce is really about customer experience, because the power has moved from the traditional distribution network or from the traditional manufacturers to who can give the best customer interface, Diwali sales and what have you. And the manner in which goods and services are delivered. And I think we are only at the beginning of this revolution, probably in the first 15–20% of it. In the next 10 years, God knows what else is to come. I was talking to some, I'm from the wrong age, but I'm the wrong side of 40 for sure, but I certainly enjoy my conversations with the younger generation of entrepreneurs who come in. And I sometimes wonder, when any conversation, I want to go for a holiday, I can give you a holiday on the internet. I want to go for this, I can give you a holiday, or I can give you this on the. It's just the speed at which they pick up ideas and convert it into an electronic delivery form is incredible. And the fact that both as business people as well as service providers, there is a legal overtone to this conference. The fact that we have to adjust our thinking in order to come to terms with this new reality is something which I don't think the legal profession has fully taken on board as well. So there's two factors: the move from west to east, technology. The third factor which is disrupting is demographics, and not only the traditional ones of China and India and the billion count populations and all of that. But there's a parallel phenomenon that's happening as well, which is that the West is aging. Whether it's in Europe, Japan, or wherever else, in developed economies, the population is aging. So where are the markets of the world? The markets of the world are where the working and the aspirational population is. That is exactly why China and India are so successful in, and several other emerging markets as well. I think Africa is probably the next one, are so successful in the move forward in terms of connecting the consumer. And the final factor of disruption is flows. movement of capital, movement of trade, movement of people, in terms of just people moving around the world, is happening at an unimaginable. People are crossing borders at a significantly a higher number than they did in the past. And that is again why the entire sort of dynamic of the world is changing. Now turning now to e-commerce, it's again an internet-based revolution that has taken place. For the fact that if you now think back in terms of why is e-commerce such a big phenomenon, and we're still at the early stage of it, we can keep marveling at how much the industry has achieved, but I believe it's achieved only about 10 to 15% of its true potential. The balance of the thing it has done is it has changed the balance of power and put it back in the hands of the ones who really need to have the power, namely the consumer. And they provided that phenomenally intelligent interface. The second thing which I want to talk about now, considering again the legal overtone of this conference, is the disconnect between our legal and policy framework and the digital world. Taxi hailing, Uber is a classic example. The time when the regulations were framed and the laws were made, nobody had even imagined the possibility of such an application, that it could really provide this intermediation between the user and the taxi driver in such an intelligent way. And the law never contemplated it. And a lot of the quarrels and the fights that you see, including in this city, are based around this fundamental disconnect, that the fact that the real world and the technology world has moved so far ahead. Things like data privacy, electronic fraud, implications on competition law. I think competition law is just about coming to even acknowledge the fact that there are so many issues resulting in this. I think there are going to be second-order implications on labor laws as well, in terms of how this is going to impact employability of people. Then there will be third-order implications on this as well. So how law and policy will evolve with a view to take note of the new reality is something which I don't think the policy world or the world of lawyers has even started to think about in a proper way. And the technology and the real world is moving at the speed of light. I think we're moving at snail's pace as well. So the challenge for the lawyers sitting in this audience is to really come to terms with this new reality. I was struck by things like the fourth order and fifth order implications, and it's a very interesting example of the Google driverless car. It's still to sort of get into sort of full commercial implications in the world, but when that happens, yes, one order of implications will be that there would probably be less accidents, and that there would be technology which would be driving a lot of movement of people from point A to point B. But you won't imagine what the fourth order implication was. The fourth order implication was on heart patients. The reason is that at least in the US, a lot of the heart or sort of organ donations come from people who are killed in car accidents. So if car accidents fall, the number of hearts that are available for being transplanted would no longer be available, because the biggest source of organ transplants is people who have on their driver's license or on their identity card put a tick against organ donation. Can you imagine the kind of implications this will have? And this is just one example which really surprised me. And I think the law and the world of policy will have to come to terms with all of these changes. As I close my introductory remarks, I think the question I ask myself is, what next? Apart from more of the same, I think we'll see a lot more M&A. I think some of the biggest M&As that will happen would be in this space as well. Many companies will do very well, they will prosper, they will grow to scale, but several of them are intended finally for consolidation in the e-commerce or other spaces as well, and the business model will transform. I don't know how many of you saw the interview of Mr. Uday Kotak when he received the Entrepreneur of the Year award, and he was asked a question by the journalist, what's your biggest worry? What keeps you awake at night? He said, I wake up in the next morning wondering whether I'll have a bank at all, or whether there'll be a Flipkart bank or a Snapdeal bank or something, which everything would have gone electronic, and there won't be a bank anymore. So disruption of these kind of fundamental disruptions which will which might even change the manner in which traditional services, which you would not ordinarily associate with the e-commerce world, could happen. The second thing which I think, and it's already been talked about, is the business model itself. This discounting business is not going to work too long. I think finally, somebody is going to ask the question, where's the profit? And I think the linkage with the funding, sources of funding, and in terms of what they will look for in terms of real cash flows in the company, which are not based on the discount model, I think is going to be one of the big debates that I think we'll see happening in the next few years. So how are we going to make money and raise capital? So all in all, as I close my remarks, I think there's going to be a new dialogue. I think technology will keep moving. I think Moore's law may get crushed even faster when you sort of apply it to this world. And the mobile revolution will enable that. I think there has to be a new dialogue on policy and regulation in terms of all the traditional models of whether it's providing finance, whether it's movement of goods and services, whether it's, and then the sort of tertiary implications on things like competition law, labor, data privacy, the works, dispute resolution. How are disputes going to be solved in this electronic world? Are they going to be solved in the electronic world, or are they going to be solved in the, if I can call it, the real world? Are our courts equipped to even deal with issues of this and what emerges from this new era of how business is done? I think these are questions which are going to engage all of us for a very long time to come. It's exciting to be living through this because I was not even born when the Industrial Revolution happened. I'm happy to be part of the second industrial revolution or the computer revolution, whatever you call it, because this is a time when the fundamental nature of humanity is and how the globe does business is being changed. And I think all of us can make a difference. So with these remarks, I think I've exceeded my time, but just thought I'll share these observations with you and hope that the rest of the day provides many more nuggets of interesting thought and information for all of us. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ajay Bail to please come forward and address the gathering. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. When I was looking at the capsule that Bitika had prepared for this session, as revealing her cautious accounting background and her extended association with the legal profession, she called it e-commerce frenzy. She didn't say e-commerce hype. She didn't say e-commerce progress. She just left it neutral. And speaking for myself, given the amount of business that e-commerce companies have generated for lawyers, I'm certainly not going to call it a hype. But being an accountant like her, I do sometimes get astounded by the valuations. But I guess that's for investors to keep themselves buoyant and for the companies to be money. Nobody's complaining, the consumer's quite happy. So the